Good evening and welcome. Starting with our top story this hour, the British government has refrained from making a statement on the farmers' protest distressing India. In the backdrop of the protests in the UK, they chose to not interfere and said that agricultural reform is the Indian government's domestic policy issue. In response to a written question in the British Parliament, the Minister of Asia in the British Foreign Office, Nigel Adams, said, and I quote, "We are aware of concerns in India and here in the UK about these reforms might affect farming communities. Agricultural reform is a domestic policy issue for the Indian authorities to address." Now, when asked about the British government's assessment of the protests by the farmers on the 26th of January, the British minister added that handling protests was an internal matter for the Indian authorities. Now, earlier this week, UK Member of Parliament Claudia Webb had extended support to the protesters, and the Labour Party MP said that they will be taking up the issue of the protest for a debate in the UK Parliament, as an online petition they had started gained more than 100,000 signatures, which qualifies the petition to be taken up for a debate in Parliament. Over the last 2 months, thousands of farmers have been protesting in India against the 3 new farm laws. The farmers argue that the 3 laws will deregulate crop pricing, reduce income and allow private players in the sector, leaving them vulnerable to large corporations. Now, they are demanding that the laws be repealed. The government says reform of the inefficient agriculture sector will open up new opportunities for farmers and has ruled out withdrawing the laws. Several rounds of talks between the government and farmers' unions have failed to resolve the dispute. Now, we are being joined by our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, for more on this. Good evening to you, Mandy. Now, the UK chose not to interfere and said that agricultural reform is the Indian government's domestic policy issue. Now, this, of course, following the online petition that had garnered more than 100,000 signatures. What do we make of this statement by the government?
I think it's going to signal the type of debate that we can expect that they will have. So it's past 100,000, it will have to be debated in Parliament. Now, that date is unclear when that will happen, but it will be debated. But the government coming out and making it very clear that they see this as a domestic issue, it's not something that the UK should weigh in, is a signal to the Parliament where they will hold their position when the debate comes across. Now, the minute it passed 10,000 signatures, they had to make a statement. They haven't made a formal statement yet, but we have had those announcements. So I think we will see messages in line with this is a domestic issue, one that India wants to deal with. It's not something that the UK likes to get involved with what they see as largely a domestic policy.
Right, Mandy. So it's been both, the statement has been both on the farm laws, which they have made clear is a domestic issue, as well as the protests themselves and the Indian government treatment of the protests in this country.
Exactly that. The only thing that they have said was that they wanted that all journalists should have the right to cover the protests, and there should be no violence against journalists, but absolutely the issue of the protests, the issue of the laws themselves are a purely Indian issue, and one that the UK does not want to weigh into. So that's very much the stance of the government. We haven't had the date for the debate when it happens, but we can expect them to reiterate this stance in it.
Right, Mandy. And has there been any reaction to the UK government's statement on this?
Not as of yet. They also have to do a written formal statement to the e-petition as well. That hasn't come. They do have another 4 days for that as well. And then, of course, the debate. I don't think many people will find it surprising that the position they've taken, they're very close to India. They see India as a very dear friend, and it's Boris Johnson's wider aim to look to the Commonwealth, especially after Brexit, to rekindle and strengthen those ties. So it's very unlikely that they are looking to essentially meddle in what they would see domestic affairs. So there hasn't been a lot of reaction. There will be much more reaction, though, when that debate takes place.
Absolutely, Mandy. Thank you very much for joining us for all the latest there. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.